Well, we've got a hot and fresh Premier League season on the docket, and it's about time we set expectations on the matches to come. Keeg and I are going to stake our claim on how the table's going to shake out. We recap all the moves the teams made in the offseason to get better, and some to get worse, as well as which of their players to watch out for going forward. And if you're lucky, we might even let you in on who's going to be taking home the hardware come season's end. Catch it all today on Coffee with a Kick. Hello and welcome to an episode of Coffee with a Kick that begins the Premier League season in full. I know we had our wonderful Premier League kit review episode right here, but doesn't tell you anything about how they're going to play. That's what this episode here today is for. And I say we've got a lot to cover in this. We've got all 20 teams, we got a table, and we got some year-end awards to give out. So I say we just go ahead and roll right into it, starting off in alphabetical order. So no hints until the very end. We start off with Arsenal. Arsenal's offseason, not a lot of action. They have an outflow of $45 million, so they did technically buy more than they brought in. But the people they brought in, I wasn't super impressed with. I mean, they already had David Raya. He's made his loan permanent, essentially, is what he did. And they brought in this guy, Riccardo Calafiori, who's a 22-year-old from Bologna for $45 million. I looked at his stats. Not great stats in the Serie A. And then Marquinhos is back from a loan. But other than that, they're basically rolling with what they had last year, which is not bad. Arsenal was good. Bukayo Saka is my guy to watch this season for them because they didn't really have any changes. He's 22 years old now, and they need to get some big action out of him in order for them to. They need him to advance into his role as like a mainstay as he moves into the prime of his career. He's still kind of young, but I think for them to get over the threshold, they need more out of him.
Yeah, Arsenal's tale of this season was shoring up the defense, made it Raya permanent after winning the Golden Glove. And then they bring in Calafiori. He's one of those where the stats don't tell the full story, but people are calling him the next John Stones. So whatever that means, it depends on the year, to be honest, of what John Stones they're talking about. But there's a lot of hype around him. City and Man U are also in the same conversation for him, but he'll be interesting. They haven't made any big splashes in the offense, which, you know, they are pretty set there, but it's almost like a Liverpool from last year, 2 years ago. Do we stick with the same people? Is that going to help? You really don't know. So I think the player to watch for in Arsenal is going to be William Saliba this year. He played amazingly at the Euros. I mean, I think he was the best defender at the Euros. Played really well last year. So he'll be kind of the standout player that I think is going to step up for Arsenal this year.
William Saliba and Bukayo Saka. Those are our players to watch for Arsenal this year. Why don't you take the next one here?
Aston Villa. Is that who we're on?
Yeah, Aston Villa.
Aston Villa, they just came off possibly the best finish to a season ever. I mean, they played amazingly. Unai Emery took them from, I think they were 9th at one point, and they finished in the European spots. To me, Aston Villa is going to kind of be in Newcastle territory this year. Last year, Newcastle had issues with playing every 3 days, especially in the fall.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know how Aston Villa is going to respond to that. They're not a very deep team. They've lost a couple of important players like Douglas Luiz. So how are they going to actually stay healthy? Unai Emery's been here before. He's taken a lot of teams to the Europa League final. He's won it a few times. So I think that having the more experienced manager, they'll play better. And they have a guy who I think is the best keeper in the Premier League in Emi Martinez. I think that he just has the stuff that is commanding. He's been in the running for Golden Glove for several years. He's winning at every level for Argentina. I think he's only getting better, so he's going to be my guy to watch for Aston Villa. But I think they're in for an interesting season with the addition of more games.
Yes, my notes here is that they essentially traded out some midfield depth for some more in the defensive line. And I think that plays a lot into that increase, that you have to rely more on your defense when you're playing as many matches, because you can't be exerting that much energy day in and day out with the same lineup. So they invested in their defense some. They kept Ollie Watkins, which is big, and he's my player to watch for them. Can he repeat, essentially? If he can do what he did last year with this better defense, I think they do move up the table some. Or at least they've got a shot to move up the table some, depending on how the other teams shake out. But I have them as a slight improvement over last year. I do think that they improved, and that's important going into a Champions League action. They picked up quite a few guys. Madsen, Amadou.
Yeah, I mean, they picked up Onana, which is pretty big because he's basically a like-for-like replacement for Luiz.
Right.
A little bit different style, but it will be interesting to see if he can replace the stalwart in the middle that was Douglas Luiz.
Yep. Next up is Bournemouth. Bournemouth. Boy, guys, Bournemouth. You lost Dominic Solanke. Do I need to say more? And you didn't really replace him with anything. They picked up a guy named Luis Sinisterra from Leeds. Fine. They picked up Ines Unal from Getafe. I didn't see a lot out of him. And Dean Hudson to try to, in their pickups, but they're a team that's $10,000 in the green on transfers this season. Which when you're in Bournemouth's position, which was sketchy last year, and losing Dominic Solanke, I don't know. I don't think I don't have a lot of hope in Bournemouth this year.
Yeah. Losing a guy that he had 19 goals.
Yeah, 19 goals
last year,
3 assists. He was involved in 22 of their 54 goals last year. Yeah, that's really hard to replace. I think a good chunk of those potentially were penalties, but either way, having a guy that can convert penalties consistently is important. Losing him is a big deal. And when I made my table that we'll talk about later, I had them a little higher. Now I've had to bump them down because of this transfer. Sinisterra was my notable transfer. He's one that I think for Leeds, it was always the service of whether the service was there. If he could score goals, if he could get enough chances, I think he could make up some of those goals. My notable player to watch is going to be Tyler Adams. So whenever he transferred into Bournemouth, he almost immediately got hurt and was out for 3 to 4 months. So if he can really be the leader they need at the CDM spot, I think that could really help Bournemouth actually do decent. And by decent, I mean not get relegated. But it'll be interesting to see for the rest of August if they can actually replace Solanke in some capacity. Yeah, and I did see that. I don't know if you saw this, but Tyler Adams is out until at least September, October with back surgery. So he will be missing the start of the season, but he was my player to watch as well. I kind of picked out a lot of American guys for my players to watch just because I am hoping to actually watch them. That was one of the things I was really missing last season with Tyler Adams being sidelined with that hammy for most of the season. It was tough. And he had a good off season. Not a great result for the USA, but he did look good in our lead ups and in our actual matches. He was very important to decide. Let's see. But this is on to you for Brentford.
Yeah, Brentford, a interesting summer. I didn't really notice many moves happening. The notable one was Igor Thiago.
Yeah.
I think they're excited about him. He's an attacker that has some pretty decent goal scoring acumen, but it's one of those where you're thinking, that translation to the Premier League, how is that actually going to work out? And Brentford's not a team that can wait. They're a team that needs to make sure they get off to a strong start because they've been a team over the last 3 years that has started strong and then waned all the way till the end. Then you get into a relegation battle. Their player to watch if they hold on to him is obviously Ivan Toney. As long as he's not betting on sports and getting suspended for it, he should play for the entire season. And I think he's got a chance to put up 20 goals. He's motivated. When he came back, he played well. He played well over the summer. For the chances that he got. So he's my player to watch. But Brentford, I was hoping for a little bit more activity. I'm not sure if financial fair play rules have anything to do with their lack of transfers in, but it is concerning considering they're not a team like they were 3 or 4 years ago where like, man, we could get 10th. No, this is we're in relegation battle every single weekend.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and they didn't lose anything was the big thing from this offseason. David Raya, who they did sell, I mean, he was already on loan with where was he was with Aston Villa. So no, with Arsenal. So they didn't,
which was
lose.
Shocking to me. I think they needed the money because you think if you just loaned out and then he comes back and he's the Golden Glove winner that you'd try to keep him or like get a little bit more money out, but he left for like 30 million pounds. So
from the side I'm using, they got under market value for him to Arsenal. So it seems like a money play there, and that it's not a great time to have money problems. I actually have Igor Thiago as their player to watch. Obviously, he's new, but they signed him to score goals, which is something that they do need if they're going to try to stay up. They had 56 last year, which is not the worst, but it's barely a manageable number there. So I think that him pairing up with Ivan Toney up top, I think that they'll play side by side. I think that's a pairing to watch because if they can work well off each other, Brentford might have a chance to not be terrible, which is the goal at this point for them, like you were saying. Yeah. And then we go to Brighton Hove Albion, them Seagulls down there. Their big, quote unquote, big signing. They had 2 signings that were fine. They had this Yankuba Minta from Newcastle that they signed, and then Mats Viffer, maybe, from Feyenoord. But they didn't really lose anybody, was their big thing. Denise Undav was their big quote-unquote sell for 26.7. It seemed like VF Stuttgart just needed a German player to fill out their squad, so they sold him because he didn't do anything for them last season. But my player to watch for them is Mitoma. Mitoma missed a lot of last season with various injuries, and you could see it on their attack that they're missing his good play from the left-hand side coming in. It'll be interesting to see if they do play Minta, how well he integrates with Mitoma on the attack. Because if they can play well, then they might be able to advance their position. I think they got marginally better just because they didn't lose anybody this offseason. But, you want to be a little bit better than marginally better.
Yeah, Brighton is also one of those teams that their biggest loss was their manager. Yeah. De Zerbi leaving and bringing in a new guy. You just never know what's going to happen in a new season with a new manager. But you're right. Mitoma seems to be the glue to their difference between scoring 3 goals and 0 goals. When he played, they scored a lot. When he didn't play, they were having trouble finding the pace and finding the finishing. So he's my player to watch. The notable transfer I had was their 19-year-old transfer, Ibrahim Osman. I think he's intriguing. He's only been on the scene for, I think, a year in pro ball, and he's 19. And Brighton is really one of those teams that wants to get out and find the young guys to explode their offense. So I think come mid-season with some injuries, with some fatigue, Ibrahim Osman may get in there and make some things happen.
From Nordsjælland. Nordsjælland is how I would say that team name. It'll be interesting to see. They're going to probably finish middle of the pack somewhere. But we'll see. And then I'll let you take Chelsea. Or should I take Chelsea? Chelsea.
Yeah, the big spenders. The American-owned club that I think has spent over $1 billion now. We're definitely beyond $1 billion ever since Todd Bowley's takeover. But this summer has been kind of quiet. A couple of ins, couple of outs until, as of August 11th, Pedro Neto, the Wolves star, and the heartbreaker of Xander is now a Chelsea Blue.
I got to knock that shot back right there.
So Pedro Neto, he's going to be a really big signing if he can stay healthy. With Wolves, it was very much like Matoma. It was like when Neto's out there, you can guarantee that Wolves could play with anyone. But when he's not out there, there's not that wing presence that they need. And this was an interesting signing because I didn't think Chelsea needed a winger, but they went out and got one. So I think it'll be interesting to see how he fits in. But honestly, player to watch is going to be Cole Palmer.
Yep.
He's the guy that's going to be the one to make or break the season.
Yeah, that's what I had as well. Cole Palmer. My note here was kind of obvious, but with the end of his run, for the end of his season run, and now they've added in another playmaker to kind of divert focus or even to assist him with getting more shots on goal, good quality looks. I mean, that's dangerous. That's dangerous to get a playmaker next to somebody who's already going to be, barking at the player of the season. Maybe. We'll see if somebody has that bold of a prediction. It's not that bold. But, I mean, Chelsea, before signing Neto, they weren't making much of a noise. But that's a big signing for them, I think. And definitely bumps them up on my table. It definitely made me have to reshuffle my table after seeing that come through on the 11th.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, will be interesting. Moving on to Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, not great. Not a great offseason so far. They're $23 million in the green. They sold Olise to Bayern Munich for under market price, but still £53 million. Haven't really signed anybody back. They've got this Chadi Riyad, center back. Ismaila Sarr, a right winger from Marseille. And then a free transfer from Lazio. But they did not get better this offseason, is their problem. And they were already not in a great position. My player to watch for them is good old Jean-Philippe Mateta. Is my player to watch for Crystal Palace. Great form coming off of the Olympics for Mateta. And they will really need him to continue that through the season in order to make up for the lack of play from Olise. Olise was injured a lot of last season, but in the 19 matches he was in, he scored 10 goals and had 6 assists. That's some efficiency in the offense. And I think that they'll have to have Mateta step up and fill those shoes more than he did already.
Yeah, I'm still of the opinion that Mateta could be on Man City before the end of the summer.
We can only operate on the information we have available at the time.
That is true as of August 11th. But Sarr, I think, is a big signing because Sarr was on Watford in their couple Premier League seasons. And then he also was transferred to Marseille because Watford couldn't get back into the Premier League. But his last season at Watford, he scored 34 goals. Pretty big deal. I think that he has a chance to replace Olise, again, if he can stay healthy. I think it's a pretty big signing. The guy to watch for is still going to be Eze.
Yep.
He's going to be the one that's going to...
He was my other option, but I picked Mateta.
Yeah.
Why don't you go and take Everton?
So when it comes to Everton, you never know what to say about them. Not a ton of moves that really happened, although I will say getting Jack Harrison back was a big deal. They loaned him. They somewhat committed to buying him, but getting Harrison back is a big deal because he really shored up their wing, really all up the wing. I mean, Harrison's one of those wingers that he's playing left wing back all the way up to basically playing a second striker. So Harrison's going to be my player to watch for Everton, and he's probably the most notable transfer that I think business that they did this summer. Just bringing him back was a huge deal.
Yeah, I didn't have a player to watch. I couldn't pick one. They didn't fix their biggest issue, which was goals. They brought in Ndiaye. We'll see if he converts also from Marseille. But they only scored 40 goals, right? Is that right? I feel like that number can't be right. Yeah, 40 goals last season. And they didn't really make a press to fix that. They didn't make a push. So I was like, Decore, Calvert-Lewin, this new guy in Ndiaye. I don't know who was the best player to watch because they didn't really bring anybody who tickles my fancy as far as attack is concerned.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to get some more goals. They were lucky the relegated teams were so bad last season. Otherwise, in a normal season, I think they get relegated. At 40 points, we've talked about this a lot. 40 points is kind of like the threshold that you get to be safe. But the other teams were just so bad that it boosted them up, and they did not fix their most glaring issue with any sort of certainty. So they're in the danger zone, Everton. They are in the danger zone for sure. Then we move on to Fulham. Let me get back over here. Fulham is up next. They are currently $12 million in the green on their transfers, which isn't great. They sold João Palhinha to Bayern Munich. Palhinha. I'm not very good at those. He's Portuguese. Portuguese names. Sure, Portuguese names. They sold him. Their big signing was Emil, probably, Smith-Rowe from Arsenal, who, I mean, they're definitely expecting big things from them with that fee that they're paying. I mean, they were almost $10 million over market value from the site that I'm using for him, and for a guy who didn't. I don't even know. Did he touch the field for Arsenal last season? I don't think so.
There were some injuries, but in a team like Arsenal, if you're injured for a while, it's going to be hard to break through.
Oh, also Rip Tim Ream. He got bounced on a free transfer to Charlotte FC. By Tim Ream. My player to watch for them, since they got rid of Tim Ream, will be the other American, Anthony Robinson, who had himself a pretty good offseason, pretty good summer season. Since I didn't really bring anybody to focus on, I want him to do well. He played decent last season for them. He had his ups and downs, very roller coaster type season for him. I want to see more consistency out of him. And maybe we can get him a little bit more action in the attack. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, Robinson is one of those that he's always been talked about potentially going to a bigger club because of how dynamic he is. Mm-hmm. So I think one good season again, it's going to get him a transfer to a big club like City, United, or overseas. My player to watch for is going to have to be Smith-Rowe. I mean, 2 years ago, he was instrumental in Arsenal's really good season that put them really back in the title contention. And it was shocking to see him pretty much be exiled, even through some injuries. He just never got a good look after that. So he's a good one to come in. They also got Jorge, however you say that, Quencha, potentially. Maybe. Defender from Villarreal. And he's a guy who, over the last couple of years, broke into Villarreal's team, actually played pretty much all of their games, played in some good European competition. So I think he'll be really good for Fulham, and a bit younger and, a bit more dynamic than maybe a Tim Ream would have been.
That's not hard.
12, 13 years his senior. So he's a notable transfer in, but I think it's going to be how influential can Smith-Rowe be. Yeah. If he can get to his form from 2 years ago, he could be the reason why Fulham takes a step forward this year.
Yeah, for sure. And then you got some stuff there for Ipswich Town.
Ipswich Town has been an interesting team. They're one of those championship sides that has decided to invest in the youth of other big clubs. Their biggest transfer coming in is Amari Hutchison. They actually bought him. He was on loan last year, and it's really a big reason why they were promoted. So they actually purchased him. I think the fee was undisclosed. And then they also brought in Liam Delap, the Man City striker, who honestly, without Erling Haaland, he probably would be playing for City. He's got the acumen to be able to play with the big dogs. I mean, when he's got in important games for City, he's done pretty well. So those two guys are going to be notable. But honestly, Ipswich, it's going to be down to Connor Chaplin. He's their number 10. He's the one that's been pulling the strings for at least their championship run last year. And he's got the maturity in the middle that he can play both the assister and the defender. So I think the player to watch for them is going to have to be Connor Chaplin, because if he doesn't play well, the engine that is the rest of their team may not be functioning properly.
Yeah, it's good to see them swinging for the fences, though. They're investing a lot in trying to stay up, and I think they've made some moves that might help there. Mine is actually one of their signees, who you didn't talk about, Muric from Burnley, a goalkeeper that they brought in.
Also, former Man City player.
Yeah, Muric. I mean, I don't know that Muric is quite the goalkeeper that you want. He had, 10 appearances and no clean sheets in those appearances, but you've got to... It is a different beast trying to defend against Premier League sides. So bringing in a goalkeeper who has experience in the Premier League can help marshal your forces a little bit with more clarity than you might from a championship side. And Ipswich hasn't been up recently, so not a lot of their players. This is going to be a big stage for them, and I think that Muric might help them stay up. I don't want to give away too much about the places that I'm giving out, but I think that he is going to be important. Not exactly a player to watch, but just take note of him, see if he's actually performing there in the goal mouth. Then next up is Leicester City, another one of our newly minted, well, not newly minted, but promoted sides. And they are kind of the opposite end of the spectrum here from Ipswich Town. Hold on, did they sign someone? What happened? No. They have taken in some youth talent. They took Michael Golding from the Chelsea youth side, a center back, Caleb Okuli from Atalanta in Italy, and a right winger, Isahaku Fatawu, possibly, from Sporting.
That's
CP.
probably the correct pronunciation.
That's probably exactly how it's said, I'm guessing. Yeah. And they sold their central mid, Kiernan Duisburg Hall, to Chelsea for above market price. So good job there. But you sell one of your main guys. Where did my notes go for them? Oh, and they lost Kelechi Iheanacho on a free transfer. Kelechi Iheanacho signing a former City player, now over with Sevilla. But Kiernan Dewsbury Hall was the mainstay of their offense. 12 goals and 14 assists for them last season. I mean, it's hard to get more pivotal than that on a team. They did bring in Buonanotte on a free transfer from Brighton. Who's a very young but promising attacking midfielder. He played pretty well for Brighton, if memory serves, last year. And a free transfer, somebody valued $18 million, is pretty nice. At least what I'm looking for. I don't know if he's going to be able to replace Dewsbury Hall's production, but I do have him as. Oh, and they also brought in De Cordova-Reid for a little bit more of a senior-sided sort of guy for the right wing from Fulham, also on a free transfer. Oh, it was a loan transfer. Sorry, free transfer for Cordova-Reid, a loan transfer for Buonanotte. But those are decent sightings on their end. I just don't know that Buonanotte, who I think will be kind of trying to fill in for Dewsbury Hall, will be able to fill those shoes. He was my player to watch as Buonanotte on a loan.
Yeah, Leicester, looking at their side, they actually have a lot of their side was on their team when they dropped from the Premier League. So they've got a lot of Premier League experience. So it doesn't shock me they haven't been doing too many moves if they don't think it's the right move. De Cordova-Reid, I think, is pretty smart because you have another experienced guy who's been in the Premier League for a few years now. He's done pretty decent when he has his chances. I mean, last year for Fulham, he actually did pretty well. So bringing him in is going to be important. Player to watch for is going to have to be Jamie Vardy for me. He signed a 1-year deal last year. He still got 20-plus goals in the championship. And I think he's still got the speed and the smarts about him to be a 10-plus goal contributor and be the reason why Leicester could stay up. But you don't know if it's going to be his last year, but I think that he's still going to be a really important player for them because if he's not scoring goals, I'm not sure who is.
Yeah. And next up, how long do we have to talk about Liverpool here? They go ahead.
Not long.
Yeah.
No transfers in. And when it comes to their new manager, usually with new managers, they're going to want to transfer out some players, transfer in some players. They've lost two pretty important players. They lost Thiago Alcantara, who he was kind of a mainstay in Klopp's midfield. And then I believe it was Joe Gomez in their defense, who they also lost. And I think it's going to be really important for them to figure out a way to replace those players. So I don't know what's going on there. Standout player is going to have to be Mo Salah. If he doesn't stand out, it's going to be a tough season for Liverpool. But the transfer window is not open for that much longer, and the fact that they haven't brought anyone in is kind of concerning for them.
What do you mean? They promoted Vidislav Jaros, their goalkeeper, from their U21 squad. Come on. Yep. That's the main one. And they got some guys back up from loan. Fabio Carvalho and Sepp Vandenberg. Obviously. My player to watch is Darwin Núñez. Can you redeem yourself, Darwin Núñez? That's what I want to know. I don't think so. I don't have any trust in you, Darwin Núñez. But prove me wrong, Darwin. Yeah, it's a weird... I mean, I don't think they were good enough to win it last season. Maybe they're still trying to get who's their new manager? I didn't catch his name.
Arne Slot.
Sure, whoever that is. I don't know him. It doesn't mean a lot coming from me, but I don't recognize the name at all. Probably was like the best player ever for Estonia or something. I don't know. But next up is Manchester City after Liverpool. Manchester City, they signed Savinho from Troyes, France's French side. From what I'm seeing, for a good deal, you got this guy, a right winger, a right winger, and you didn't really lose anyone. You lost Sergio Gomez, who had played some, but Taylor Harwood-Bellis, I don't know, played for you at all last season. Maybe had some sub appearances, but I don't think he started anywhere. So City's basically just letting it ride, is what I'm gathering here. So the player to watch for me is Phil Foden. Who I accidentally spelled with two PHs. His last name starts with an F. But my big point of emphasis for him is, can he continue to mature into the replacement for Kevin De Bruyne that he seems to be making an effort to be. He plays a little bit more personally aggressive than KDB does. That he'll actually he'll advance on goal and take a shot himself, which I think is like a useful difference from KDB, with having them on the same squad, obviously. But can he continue to progress as he has, especially this last season?
Yeah, Foden, also my player to watch for. The past season, he noticeably improved his want to finish. His ability was always there, but it was, is he looking to finish? Mm. And we noticed it in the uptick of goals. And as you mentioned, he's actually more aggressive when, I can score here. When in the past, it seemed like if he was in front of goal, he was always trying to be unselfish, or he would hesitate, take the wrong shot. But last year, he was dead-eye from pretty good angles, pretty close angles. He's my player to watch for. Savinho, we got a good deal because Troyes is in the Man City group, the City football group, and gotcha. Savinho played at Girona, which is also in the City group. So it's almost like we bought him at one point a few years ago and just kind of moved him around.
Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah.
So it's kind of a good deal overall because now Troyes gets money. We get a good deal. And they couldn't really say no. But there's some rumors that there's some rumors that we may be getting Joshua Kimmich. There's rumors that we may be getting Danny Olmo, getting another midfielder in, because this could be KDB's last year. There's been rumors about that. Could be Pep's last year. There's been rumors about that. So it seems like we may bring in one or two more big names just to kind of get them in the door before a big shakeup happens. Mm-hmm. But either way, no matter how good Haaland plays, no matter how good De Bruyne plays, no matter how good our defense is, I think last year it was literally Phil Foden who carried us in the middle of the season because we could rely on his health and rely on his play. And I think, again, he's going to have to be the one that's going to carry City to a fifth straight title.
Oh, okay. Gonna go on. Well, it would be him. We're not gonna make any claims yet. We're not there yet, but
I'm not
very
saying
soon.
anything yet, but he's going to have to be the one.
He would be the one. Okay, and then
And
yeah,
Man U,
Man U.
if we're moving outside of the city, because all city's actually in the city, Man U's not. Man U, they have made only really two major signings. I think actually these are the only two signings they've made. And
Yes.
I like them because they're very mild, but they're good. Lenny Euro is actually a very decent signing from Lille. Josh Zirkzee was on Bayern Munich for a while, and then he was at Bologna. Both these guys have really good potential, and I think they might fit the profile of someone replacing a Martial and a Rafael Varane and a couple of people they lost this summer. But I've been shocked that they too, kind of like Liverpool, haven't made a big splash. They've just kind of been getting a couple of young guys who are probably going to be bench riders for the first season. I don't know if that's a depth play or not, but we'll see. I think their standout player is going to have to be Garnacho. If he takes another step, then he's going to be the one to like really propel Man U back into the top four potentially. So if he can keep up his assisting and his goal scoring, then I think he'll be the player of the season for Man U.
My player to watch for Man U, because you're right. They didn't really lose anybody who they were using. Is kind of what happened with Man U. So they're just adding stuff. They're adding pieces. So yeah, you're right that they got more depth, but did they improve? It's sort of like, is that going to help you out much? My player to watch is Bruno Fernandes. He had 10 goals and 8 assists for them last season. Very useful in their attack. If he can up his game a little bit alongside with Garnacho, sort of blossoming, I think that they have a chance to move up the table some. That they definitely want to do, but they'll have a good chance to move up the table some. Manchester United leads us into Newcastle United. Newcastle United, who is $8 million in the green right now. They sold Elliot Anderson, who's a 21-year-old, who they didn't really use last season, I don't believe, for way above market price from what I'm seeing here. So they had some good sales. They had some very costly and some very good sales on their end. And their signings, I don't know. I don't really like them. If we're being honest, I don't really like these. They one of their biggest signings is this Odysseus Vlachodimos, a Grecian German goalkeeper from Nottingham Forest. Who, let's see, what did I say? 30-year-old goalkeeper for triple market value. I don't know why they paid, from what I'm seeing here, they paid over triple market value. You already have Dubravka and Nick Pope, who was in 15 matches last season and had 5 clean sheets in those 15 matches. So, that's a pretty good ratio. I don't know why you just need to spend this much money on another goalkeeper. Unless you're playing to lose one of those guys. And I haven't seen that come through yet, if so. And then they've got Lewis Hall, who's a 19-year-old from Chelsea. Again, signed him above market value, from what I can see. And then also a William Osula from Sheffield United for way above market value. So they sold for above market value and bought for above market value. And William Osula, 21 appearances for Sheffield United last season, 0 goals. That's not very efficient for a center forward. So I have them not having any change, really, from last season. I can't see that they got better, but I can't really see that they got worse.
Yeah, but besides Vlachodimos coming in, they got younger, which I think was what they were trying to do. Lewis Hall, I think, is 19. He was my notable transfer in because I think that he actually played at Chelsea a little bit, and I think that he's got a chance to actually break into Newcastle's team. So he's my notable transfer. I think he'll play a little bit. They also brought in John Ruddy, who's also a goalkeeper. I didn't understand that one.
Oh, yeah. 37 years old.
Yeah, he was pretty much the Norwich City mainstay when Norwich was in the Premier League for a while. But regardless, Newcastle player to watch for me is going to be Alexander Isak.
Yeah,
I think
that's what I had.
if he keeps goal, I mean, I think he had 22, 23 goals this past season. He can get 20 plus again. Newcastle is going to be on track to, again, push for the top 4, be a top side. Yeah, I don't know if they're spending over market value due to age because they think that we got to get the youth in now and let it ride out. Not sure what's going on there, but Newcastle, I'm going to hope for a little bit more signings. They brought in Lloyd Kelly, who's like a Bournemouth, pretty decent Bournemouth player. Not sure how he's going to fit in at Newcastle, but it's Eddie Howe, so he's always wanting to bring in a Bournemouth guy. So you never know how he's going to set up anything. But I think Newcastle, they kept a lot of players, which is good. So it'll be interesting to see how year 2, year 3 of some of their newer signings per se mesh together.
And then Nottinghamforest on your end.
Yeah, boy, Nottingham, I mean, they are the transfer kings. They do a lot of business of transferring in and transferring out. Their signing that I thought was interesting was Nikola Milenkovic, mainly because he's a very experienced Serbian. And I think that he's got a chance to actually be a stalwart for Nottingham. I think they needed I believe he's a central defender. Yeah, there he is. Central defender, 6'5". They needed a guy who's strong in the middle.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they had Willie Boley for a little bit, but he was kind of on the tail end of his like decent run of being good. So bringing in Milenkovic, he seems like a pretty solid, pretty proven defender. There weren't really any other signings that really like tickled my fancy. They transferred out a lot of guys. A few that had played for them, a few that really didn't. Yeah. Their loans, they had a few like important loans. Gio Reyna, not very important loan. He didn't do much. But Nuno Tavares, Divock Origi, these guys that kind of provided them with some depth that was quality, they're no longer on the team. So Nottingham player to watch for me is going to be Hudson-Odoi. He played really well at the end. Pretty much the only reason they stayed up last year. So I think that he's going to be another reason why they potentially could stay up. If he doesn't play well, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the same sort of thing because I didn't getting their defense a little bit more experience and sturdiness. I think is good on their end because they were another team that was lucky that the teams that got promoted ended up being so bad because they could have easily gone down. I think they got a little bit better with these transfers. I'm sad that Gio Reyna, didn't get renewed, but he didn't deserve to be renewed either. But yeah, not a lot to talk about for them right now. It's just other than just you're right. There's just so many loans ending, loans starting, people getting people coming back, going out. A lot of movement. But next up is our last of the newly promoted sides, Southampton. Southampton, who has spent a little bit, who spent 51 million more than they sent out, mainly because they didn't really get rid of anybody. They didn't sell a lot of their players, and they brought in that Taylor Harwood Bellis from Man City's system. He's a 22-year-old center back, so that helps increase their defense there. They brought in Adam Lallana on a free transfer. I thought that was interesting. And another relatively untested defender, Flynn Downs, who was in the West Ham system, didn't play a lot for them, but they're trying to, similar to Ipswich Town, they're trying to help their defense be better rather than working on the offense because draws will get you through. Draws will get you by and large. A 1-1 draw is fine, if you can hold them to it. So we'll see if they. I don't know anybody on their team really, so it's hard for me to pick a player to watch. I don't know how much Adam Lallana is actually going to play for him. I feel like he's more just a locker room guy. He might play. He's 36, so he's not too super old. But I think he was more just like get the guy's experience with what to expect in the Premier League was my take on him getting signed.
You've seen it work before. Sometimes it doesn't work, but Lallana is a good one because he came from Southampton. Mm-hmm. Like that was the move that before Liverpool bought him. That's where he was. So it's going to be cool to see him back in the colors, actually like helping them in the Premier League again. Notable transfer for me was Harwood Bellis. He is a player who Pep actually really liked, had gotten a few opportunities when he wasn't loaned out. So it'll be interesting. He's kind of like a Tosin Adarabioyo, where he was like almost there for City, but hadn't quite broken in yet, but wanted to get more playing time. So we'll see. I think he's a good signing. The player to watch for Southampton is going to be another City guy that they signed, Samuel Odozie. I think he is fantastic. City put a buyback clause in his contract because we think he's also pretty good. But he is creative. He can play in the mid. He can play on the wing. And if he can bring that creativity to the games that we think they have a chance of winning and be the reason why they can get 3 points every now and then, he could be the reason why they stay up. But he's my player to watch for Southampton.
Oh, he's not on my list. Yeah, I don't see him on here. I don't know why that's not. Why did he technically get transferred before this?
Last year?
Okay.
So he's not a new transfer, but
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, you've got Tottenham. You can hit us off on Tottenham.
Ooh, Tottenham. Actually, some notable moves, and some players who played for them a lot over the past few years, getting loaned out or released. You have Ndombele, who, as we know, 2 or 3 years ago was one of their starters. He's now been released. Tanganga and Ryan Sessegnon, Ivan Perisic, Eric Dyer. I mean, these are big names over the past 2 to 3 years that Tottenham are letting go for free. They transfer out Joe Rodon. They loan out Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. They loan out Brian Gill. A very strange events happening at Tottenham. And as we know, Postecoglou, he loves his specific style of play, so maybe they don't fit. But I mean, these are names that, again, 2 years ago were like the Tottenham team. Like, they're in the starting 11. Their notable transfer in is obviously Solanke. That is a huge transfer in. And loaning back in Timo Werner, I think, is a really smart move. We're going to say, hey, he played well. He hasn't played super great in the past for Chelsea and other people, so we'll loan him again. And it wouldn't shock me if he plays well again and they keep loaning him, because Leipzig is like, hey, you just pay the weekly payroll. We're good. But bolstering the attack is important. Player to watch for me, again, has got to be the guy who's been there forever, the guy we know and who everyone loves, Son Heung-min. He's got to be the one to watch. If he provides the goals and the assists and the flair, Tottenham play well. When he's not on the pitch, Tottenham is, I think, at best, the 7th or 8th best team in the Premier League. But when he's on the field, they can beat anybody. So he's my player to watch for Tottenham.
My player to watch for is a bit anticlimactic. It is Dominic Solanke. I mean, he's the most costly transfer in the season, in this offseason thus far. I'm almost done checking just to make sure I was right on that. I was just thinking about it. Oh, that was them selling Dominic Solanke. Yeah. And he will need to integrate into Son's mechanism, because Son is how Tottenham operates. So he needs to work well with him, not the other way around. And that's going to be a big thing to see, and will go a long way towards how much better he makes Tottenham. Because if he can take some of the pressure off of Son and work as a partner with him, they could make some noise this season. Because I had confidence in him last season, and Son was injured a lot, so they kind of trailed off. They were in that weird, we don't actually want to be in 4th battle with Aston Villa there at the end of the season, and Aston Villa ended up not wanting to be 4th as much. Is that right? I don't. I've lost the plot a little bit there.
Yeah, anytime Aston Villa could be better than their position they were in, they decided to just not play well that weekend.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I think Tottenham got better. Tottenham got better because they have these weird. You're right. They made no money off of all these transfers, which they probably should have made some money off of. So now they're technically the biggest spenders this offseason with almost 110 million in the red. So maybe they'll sell somebody for some money before the season starts, or before the transfer window ends. We'll see. But next up is West Ham United, who are also pretty big spenders, $82 million in the red this season. Their big signings were Max Kilman, another Wolves player getting sold for a bunch of money, who was just, kind of really important to our team last season. So that's good. That's really good. Wow, so great. They signed Nicholas Füllkrug from Borussia Dortmund, who had played pretty well for them in the Champions League. But signing a 31-year-old center forward, it's an interesting move. It's an interesting move. They conceded 74 goals last season, West Ham United did, which is the most among any team that wasn't relegated. And they somehow still finished in, 10th? 9th. So, you improve that defense a little bit, and Max Kilman will help you improve that defense a little bit. I think that they can easily bounce up the table with a move like that. My player to watch for them is Mohamed Kudus, if he maintains his spot if he doesn't get sold somewhere, because he's a very exciting player to watch in their midfield there, and he played very well for them last season. He needs to continue to produce for them to make that jump up there, but I think that he's just a fun player to watch on West Ham. Yeah,
West Ham, kind of like Tottenham, releasing or transferring out some of their better players from last season who actually played well. Thilo Kehrer transferred out to Monaco. Ogbonner has been released. Said Ben Rama transferred out. Guys who had played for them last year, 2 years ago, that were mainstays, now gone. A notable transfer for me was Somerville from Leeds. Somerville was like Leeds' big, here's our youth. He's our great guy. Leeds didn't make it back up, so he decided I want to actually go back to the Premier League. So that's a big signing. Füllkrug is interesting. It seems like they're kind of signing him because he's had an uptick in form.
Yeah.
And he was Germany's guy in the World Cup and in the Euros. So it seems like they're trying to squeeze out the last year or two of his career. Jean-Claire Todibo, also kind of a big loan in from Nice. He's a guy who has a lot of potential, who was at Barcelona at one point. Yeah, Wolves, your two probably best players from last year are now gone. You hate to see it, but
Wolves
also...
are in a second, okay. You moved to Wolves. I got you. You moved to Wolves. Okay, because they are...
Well, no, I'm still talking about Kilman.
Okay.
I'm talking about Kilman now. We'll talk about the Wolves. But you just got to think, what are you doing? But yeah, it's a lot of money. Wolves are going to do something with it. Who knows? But Kilman's a great signing for West Ham. Guy who you got to look out for is still going to be James Ward-Prowse for me.
Yeah.
He set piece specialist, whether it's a corner or a free kick. When he's at his top form, West Ham did not lose last year. When he was having trouble making passes, he wasn't on, West Ham drew or lost. So he's going to be the guy for me that if he stands out this season, he plays well. It's going to be the difference between 13th and European spots for West Ham. Moving on to our last team.
Go ahead.
The Wolverhampton Wanderers. They've had some interesting moves. We've already mentioned Neto. We've already mentioned Kilman being two really huge losses. It's not the only time, when Wolves let go of Raul Jimenez and Adama Traore, it felt like the end of the world. And then they went out and signed a couple of guys, and it was like, oh no, we're still here. I don't know what they're going to do with that money, but they brought in Tommy Doyle. I think that's a sneakily good signing for them because Tommy Doyle was, again, one of those City guys who was breaking into the team, playing really well, but Pep just thought that they needed more time. They didn't want to wait. But he's decent. And then this Rodrigo Gomez, I think he's young. He's got a lot of talent, too. He fits the Portugal profile of Wolverhampton.
Yep.
So I don't know. I like those two signings. Their player to watch for me is going to always be Hwang Hee-chan this season. I think when he's been healthy, he's been their go-to guy, him and Cunha. But I think Chan, whenever Cunha and Chan are both playing, I think Chan is the more important piece because of how he plays off of Cunha. And he's a little bit more dynamic than Cunha. So
a little more consistent as well with the
yes, striking. A little bit more consistent. So if he can stay healthy, I think, again, he's one of those where difference between top 10 or relegation battle. So I don't think they're going to let go of him or anyone else big unless like 80 million pounds comes in the door. But Wolves, I don't hate it. I'd like to see them spend the Neto money before the end of the window, but
Please.
I don't know. They
Please.
seem to have retained most of their team and brought in a couple of young talents who I think could benefit them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so opposed to the young talent if we didn't have an immediate need for talent, you know? My note was we in trouble. That was my note. Because losing Neto, that one is tough. So my player to watch because of losing Neto, and I made this decision after seeing that, is Pablo Sarabia, because he kind of shifted into that Neto playmaker role when Neto was out for most of the season. And he did a decent job of it. So I think... Because unless we make a good sign, we've got money to work with now. Like we've got 74 million pounds. I've been saying dollars. We're talking in pounds this whole time. So it's taking like what, like a 20% more in American dollars? Is it that low? Is it higher than that? Whatever. It's more money.
It depends on the season. 20-30%.
20 to 30%, something like that. But if we spent all that money and ended at net zero for the season, we have the most expensive signing in this season. Now, I don't think anyone who's worth $74 million will come to the Wolves is probably more of the issue. But we could spend 45 or something and get somebody who's really good. Who would that be? I don't know. I'm grasping at straws here because it's looking like I'm definitely more nervous than I was yesterday on the 10th going for this season.
Wolves is one of those teams where they're going to go out and find some guy from like the Portuguese Division 3. Yeah. And he'll come in and he'll end up scoring 15 goals and then they'll sell him for 65 million too.
I mean, we can hope. Maybe that's our Rodrigo Gomez guy. Or Gomes. I don't know if you'd say it's probably Gomez, right?
I think it's Gomez.
It's Gomez. It's just not a Z at the end. So it's Gomes. He's not from Dallas. Dallas is not a very good choice. He's not from... Where's the name Gomes? Sounds like it's from Philadelphia. He's not from Philadelphia. His name is Gomez. He's from Portugal. All right, but that brings us to the end of players to watch for season off-season breakdowns. So now we get into the meat of the matter here. Table time. All 20 spots. How do we want to do this? Do we want to start from the bottom and just work our way up? Or do we want to do the middle chunk and then go down or something? So we can. I
think we start at 10. And then incrementally 10, then go to 11, then 9, then 12, then 8. I think we.
Okay,
it's
like a snake draft.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do. Okay. Starting at 10, then we'll both just. So at 10, I have Brighton. I have Brighton Hove Albion at 10, which is a little bit better. It's one place better than they finished last season, and I think that's mainly because I think they got a little bit better this offseason with their signings. I think that Mitoma can, if Mitoma can stay healthy, they might be able to improve beyond that. But I think 10 is a very, very common spot for BHA at this point.
Yeah, number 10 for me, I have West Ham. I think they've done good in the market, but not having David Moyes, historically West Ham has not done good without David Moyes. So it wouldn't shock me if come December or January, David Moyes is back in charge for his umpteenth tenure time for West Ham, and he leads them to top 10. But I think 10 feels good. They haven't gotten exponentially better. They haven't gotten exponentially worse. And I think that their offense is going to be lacking this year. So I put them 10th.
All right, so for 9th, then we'll go up to 9th. For 9th, I had Newcastle. And I have them dropping down mainly because I don't think they improved, really, this offseason. And I think other teams did. Other teams around them, I think, did improve, which will then push Newcastle lower on the table. I don't think they can replicate that many goals again this season. 85 is a lot of goals for them. I mean, with their goals that they were scoring, they should have been top 4. I mean, they had a 23 goal difference, which is significantly better than the team. Up until you get to Liverpool, it's significantly better than the rest of the table. So the fact that they basically lost terribly to good teams, I don't think the punching bags will be as easy this season as they were last season.
Yeah, some of that is skewed because I think just Sheffield, they had a 14-0 difference in both games they played.
Exactly.
But one reason, I think Newcastle will do better than that, and we'll get to that. But ninth for me was Crystal Palace. I think Crystal Palace losing Olise is important, but like we said, he also kind of had some injuries. Ismail Assar, I think, is going to come in, and if he can replicate his Watford form, he was a guy that Liverpool almost spent £70 million on. So he's got the stuff. It just depends on, will it translate? Mm-hmm. Crystal Palace's new manager, he's got them humming. So my prediction of ninth is because I think Mateta will move on to a bigger team. We'll see. They could get higher than that if he doesn't. But either way, I think ninth is a pretty good finish for Crystal Palace.
Well, speaking of Crystal Palace, I have them at 11th. Kind of factoring in a little bit of that Mateta moving on, a little bit of that Olise leaving. You know, I think that a lot of teams did get better this season. And I don't know that Crystal Palace, they didn't. They didn't get better. I don't think. Not with proven commodities, at least.
For me, 11 is my shocking pick of the entire board, probably. Number 11, I have the newcomers Ipswich Town.
Oh, wow.
And my biggest reason for that is they have youth, and they have youth that have been on their team before, but they kept their manager, who Chelsea was after, Liverpool at one point was after, Man U was thinking about bringing him in over keeping Ten Hag. So Kieran McKenna is the quote-unquote genius of Ipswich Town. And I think he's got the tactical ability to really win the trench games, you know, the games where it's like, okay, here's the bottom five, we got to win these. I think Ipswich Town has the stuff to win those more often than not, and kind of propel them up to the 11th spot. So I have them at number 11. They're my kind of shock team.
We'll compare notes here in just a second on Ipswich Town. That won't be too long. Hint, hint. 8, I've got West Ham. They did get better this season. I think they will be better than just one position on the table, I think. But I think that the top of this table, I think, is just very tight. And a lot of the teams that were like marginally good teams got to be much better teams. We'll get to that in a moment, who I'm specifically talking about. But it's going to be breaking into like the top 6 in this table is going to be tough. And I think that West Ham isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, number 8, I have Liverpool. And that is solely because no transfers in as of August 11th. It doesn't look like they're going to bring in any transfers based on rumors. Like, none of the rumors are like picking up. And it's going to be tough because they're also in Champions League. And their depth has been hurt this past season. They have a new manager, new style of play. It's really hard to replace a manager who's been there for, I think Klopp is there 9-10 years and did so much. And as we've seen with teams like Man U, they get a new manager, they typically drop 2, 3, 4 places. So I think they go to 8th just because of the amount of games there is, the different style. Salah is getting older. It wouldn't shock me if he transfers out in January. Who knows? But it'll be interesting. I think they get 8th either way.
8th. Then we flip to the other side to 12th. 12th, I've got Fulham. I've got Fulham in 12th, getting a little bit better over last season. I think that's more of a function. I don't know. I actually don't know why I put them in 12th. They should be lower down, I feel like. You know what? I'm going to make an executive decision here. No, I'm going to stick with them at 12th. I think Anthony Robinson really comes into his own this season. There we go. We'll stick with the American.
Yeah, I mean, that would be one place better than last year, so it's not out of the question.
And you know, it was very tight there in the middle. I mean, they were at
1
47,
point separated
48,
11th
48,
through
49.
13th.
Yeah. So it was very tight there. I think it will be probably tight again this season. So, well, you know, but it's preseason predictions. Not everything has to make perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, last season, 9th and 14th was separated by 6 points. So it really is a matter of like, if you win a couple more games or draw a couple more games, you could go up 3-4 spots. 12th, I have Everton. I think that they would have, honestly, I think they would have been 12th last year had it not been for the point deductions. So they're good enough. They're good enough to be 12th. I think they didn't lose anyone. They brought back Harrison. And it's going to be interesting to see how their defense holds up, because their defense was like 1 week clean sheet, looks like the best defense in the Premier League. Next week, give up 3 goals, probably could have been 7. Biggest thing for them is the fact that they've kept Pickford. He's been the reason why they've stayed in the Premier League, honestly, the past 3 seasons. So I think they're going to reward that effort, and they're going to start climbing up the table. I think they potentially could get higher than 12th, but it's the lack of depth that they have that makes me keep them at 12.
That may be our biggest disagreement there. We'll take a look at it here in a minute. But, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. 7th, something we're almost directly agreeing on. I have Liverpool at 7th for much the same reason that I think the teams around Liverpool, except for City and Arsenal, who didn't really change anything, everyone else got better, basically, on that part of the table. And Liverpool didn't. So I think that they're going to get past. I think they're going to get passed by. They're new, like you said, new manager, new system. You don't have, I can't say Klopp out anymore because he went and left. So
it worked, though. So whatever you want to say this year might happen again.
Postecoglou out. I don't know why I'm saying these things. No, not Postecoglou. I'll pick somebody eventually. But I think Liverpool gets 7th. It's going to be a very disappointing season for them. But you know what? You don't make moves. No pain, no gain. That doesn't make any sense in this context.
No move, no groove. We'll say that. I have Chelsea at 7.
Oh.
I want to put them higher, but if it wasn't for that really amazing stretch of winning 10 out of their last 12, they wouldn't even have been near the top 6 last year. They would have been 9th or 10th. And then they let Pochettino go. So, again, new manager, new regime. They have a lot of young players. Their older players, like Sterling, did not play great last year.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that they just have so many players that their manager, it's going to take him some time to figure out who the best lineup is, who are the players he wants to play, what's the depth rotation like. Their benefit is they're not in European competition, so they do have a little bit of a break some weeks to kind of figure it out. But I think it's just, again, it's the fact that they have so many players, so many young players, that they're going to rotate. They're probably going to over-rotate. And it's not going to allow players to get into a groove, get in good form. Because even last year with Cole Palmer, near the end of the season, he started to get rotated out a couple of games, and he got frustrated because he would come back in and not play as well. So they're 7th for me simply because I think they're going to over-rotate, play too many players. And it's a new manager, so he's going to have to take time to figure it out.
Interesting. That's a take for certain. 13th now. And this is where I have Ipswich Town, because I think they did come in, and I think they did make a lot of good changes. I think they're going to try to ride that defense that they did improve. And I think they're promising to actually stay up, is basically what it boils down to. There's some other the other relegation sides are a little bit more questionable. I think Ipswich Town is looking like they're trying to stay up. And I like their crest. Okay? I like the crest. That's why they're staying up for the most part, is their horsey.
Yeah, for me, 13 is Fulham. I think they're going to fit right where they fit last year. Made some good people come in. Smith Rowe, that was a terrible sentence. Brought in some good people. But Fulham, I think that they're just going to stick to 13. They're kind of that team that has always been in and around the 10 through 15 range, and I think they're going to stay there because they're kind of like Wolves. I think if they have players who have really good seasons, they just get transferred out.
Yeah.
But I think Fulham's got a good shot to maybe get a little higher, but again, it's going to be that difference between a couple of games that's going to make the difference.
It'll be close. Then to 6th, I've got Manchester United at 6th, which is they moving up the table a little bit for Manchester United. Why did I do that? Hold on, my notes got out of order. There we are. Because I think that they did improve this offseason with their signings. It'll be interesting. I mean, the Xerxes, I don't know if he'll play much, but he did have 11 goals last season for whoever he was playing. So I think that they move up some because they tried to make a change and Liverpool didn't.
Yeah, I have Tottenham at 6. I think that they dipped in form last year due to some injuries. Again, they're not a very deep team, especially with all the departures this past summer. So unless they get some more transfers in, I think it's going to be a sophomore slump for Postecoglou, and I think they're gonna get 6th.
I think it's Postecoglou, isn't it?
No, I don't necessarily care. So
Postecoglou, he's a New Zealander. He's from New
Arnie,
Zealand.
That's his name. Ainge is his name.
Ainge Postecoglou. It's why you say his name. Don't worry about it, okay? Tottenham, they're going way higher than that. Just you wait. To 14, I've got Nottingham Forest. I believe in Nottingham Forest this year. I don't think they're going to be too terrible. Going to their positioning on my notes here, I think they got a little bit better. So, yeah, why not? 14th. 14th for Nottingham Forest.
For me, I have Brighton at 14. I think they've kept enough players that they're good enough to be at 14. They have enough dynamic offense to do that. They did, I think it was Pascal Gross was transferred out, which is a pretty big deal for Brighton because he's been a mainstay for a bit on their team.
Yeah.
But I think they're a good solid 14.
Yeah. Yep. I did have that note lost. Yeah. They're hoping that their Mats Viffen will replace Pascal Gross is what it looks like to me. One of their big signings this offseason. We'll see if he integrates as easily as it would be otherwise. Then to 5, just outside, well, depends on who wins the Champions League, but just outside of automatic champions and qualification, I have Aston Villa on the outside looking in this season at 5 because they got better just by the offseason changes that they made. But I think that the other teams got more better.
Yeah,
or we're just better to begin with, like Arsenal and City. I think they're just better to begin with, and then the other teams that are above them got more better than they did.
Yeah, this one we both have the same. I have Aston Villa.
Sick.
I think they're good enough to get 5th, but I think the addition of Champions League is going to make the middle of the season interesting for them. And like we both kind of said, they lost and gained pretty much the same amount. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I think they're good enough. Their manager's good enough. Their goalkeeper's obviously good enough to still stay in the European realm.
Oh, I did want to cover something funny that Aston Villa did in their transfer for their guy Archer. They sold Archer to what's his actual name? Hold on, where am I? There we are. Cameron Archer. They sold Cameron Archer to Sheffield United last season for $21.55 million, and then just bought him back for $16.65 million. So apparently, playing on Sheffield knocks $5 million off of your transfer fee.
Wow.
Yes, but moving down to 15th. 15th, I've got Brentford. Those Brentford Bees. They had they made some good changes this offseason with getting the Igor Thiago and not really losing anybody. So I think that they improved their positioning a little bit from where they were last season. Won't be so worried about relegation this year is what I think.
Yeah, 15, I have Wolves. I think losing Neto is a big deal.
So kind.
And unless they get a couple more transfers in, depth is going to be another issue, as it was last year.
Yeah.
But they have the money to make that up. We'll see if they do that. But 15th feels good. I don't think it's going to be as close as like a almost relegated. But I do think it's going to be another nervy season, at least in the middle of the pack for Wolves.
That makes one of us. 4th, automatic Premier League qualifier. I have the Tottenham Hotspurs. I've got Tottenham in 4th. I think that they made big. They're swinging big for this season, trying to make moves. Not trying. They did make moves to get better, and I think it pays off. If they can keep Son healthy all season, I think that they can get into the Champions League next.
Yeah, I think this will be one of those seasons where the 3 through 6 is again extremely tight.
Yeah.
I mean, this past year we saw 4 through 8 was pretty tight. Fourth, I have Man U. I think that they're a little bit more mature. They've committed to Ten Hag. I think that he will figure something out where they get back to Champions League. They're in Europa League this year, so it'll be interesting to see how they actually play and who they play in the Europa League, or they actually might be in the European Conference League. It might be even worse. So we'll see if they take that seriously. But I do think that they play well enough this season. They have the squad of players to do so. So I think fourth is a good spot for them.
Fourth for you. And then to 16th, I have Southampton staying up. They made changes to try to make that a thing. And as you've said, that most of their players were actually on their Premier League side when they got relegated. So I think that they got better. And we'll see how. And they've got a couple of those young guys who they brought in who are very promising prospects.
Yeah, 16th, I have Bournemouth. I had Bournemouth higher before the Solanke transfer, and now I've dropped them. They were my 13th team. Now they're at 16. I think they're good enough to stay up, but losing literally 40% of your goals from last season is damaging.
It's not great.
So
it's not great.
It's not great. We'll see if they can make up for it, but I think they've got enough maturity, enough experience to stay up. So I have them at 16.
We'll see. I am not as optimistic. Back up to the top for third. I don't know if you're tracking which teams are left available, but I'm putting Arsenal in third. Because they didn't change anything. And I think that another team is going to be coming into their own and made a transfer that is to try to be better. So we'll get to that in just a second. You could probably guess at this point who I'm talking about. But who do you have at third?
Third, I have Newcastle. And my biggest piece of that is last year they diminished so far because they did have trouble in the Champions League weeks because it was every 3 days. This year they don't have that. And I think they're good enough of a team to be able to actually, once they get rest, once they get healthy, they have a chance to actually have some form that is week over week. So I have them at third because of no Champions League means that they get a bit more rest and they can get guys healthier.
All right, Newcastle in third. Now down to 17th, battling for relegation. I do have my Wolves. Unless they can make another signing, then I think it's going to be tough sledding. Tough sledding.
For me, 17 is Leicester I think that they have the experience and the former Premier League experience to stay up. I think it's going to be really tight at the bottom, but I think Jamie Vardy's going to get it done for him, keep him up. I think he'll retire into the sunset afterwards. A part of me wanted to just put them winning the entire thing because why not? They've done it before. Won't do that this time.
No.
17 feels good. I think that they've just got enough to stay in it.
How did we get off? We're going to go ahead and do 18 now because we got off once. I'm not sure where it happened. But we have 2 left on top and 3 left on bottom. So 18th, the first relegated position, I do have Leicester City. I think that they... I don't think they made enough changes to stay up. I mean, they got relegated for a reason. And I don't think that they made enough changes to stay up. I just said that, and I'll say it again because that's what I think.
In 18th, I have Brentford. I think they were lucky to stay up last year. I don't think they're going to be as lucky this year. They really needed to give...
Bees.
Yeah, I think the Bees will join their actual real-life bee friends and be on the brink of extinction. And it's going to be interesting to see. They really needed help on the wings. Buemo is pretty much the only one on the wings providing any sort of quality. And I don't think they needed a striker, but they brought in Igor Thiago anyway. So they haven't really hit the points of need. And if they don't, it's going to be tough sledding. And I think they just miss out to Leicester City on staying up.
I think it will be tight at the bottom. And then we'll go up to second. Second, I do have Chelsea. Okay. I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I'm a Cole Palmer believer. And I think that stealing Pedro Neto will help them immensely. I mean, they didn't steal him. They literally paid for him. But still, you know what I mean.
I mean, if he can stay healthy, that's the theme of
If he
Neto.
can stay healthy, that's fair. That's fair.
I think just by pure system, I think Arsenal is going to get second. I think their system is just way too good at this point. Because even if they bring in average players on defense in the midfield, their system is still going to fit pretty well. I don't think it'll be as close this year. I think Arsenal gets second by a good bit, but I think the team getting first.
I think we both know at this
You'll
point.
probably get. I mean, obviously it's Southampton on my side, but you just never know with Arsenal. I think they're good enough to get second, so that's why I put them there.
Yeah, and then we both have City up top. I mean, listen, they won with having major injuries throughout most of the season last year. They were missing Haaland for 3 months, KDB for 5 months, I think it was, and they still managed to make it and win the Premier League. So, like we said, until they have, and they didn't change anything. Like they let it ride, and that's perfectly fine if you're Manchester City. So, and Jeremy Doku is now been integrated with the side. He was very good at the end of last season. And I think he'll just be better this season because he was very good for in the Euros for France, right? France, yeah, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Doku's Belgian.
No, Belgium. Yes, it was just him and KDB for Belgium. That's right. It was him and KDB for Belgium. They were the only ones doing anything for the Belgian side, which we both had. Well, we both had pretty high hopes for in the Euros, and then they didn't go as far as we would have liked. So KDB is probably never going to get a trophy with Belgium is basically what it boils down to. So we both got City up at top. And then we'll go down to 19th. This was our biggest disagreement here. I think I've got Everton in 19th.
Wow.
Yeah, it was this. It was 7 places between us here and Everton. They had point deductions last season. But the main thing is that what I said when we were talking about them, they didn't fix the thing that was the problem. They scored 40 goals last season. 40 goals. Yeah. I know your defense is very good. Jordan Pickford was very good. I think he was like 4th in the Golden Glove running for clean sheets, and made some incredible saves. But he gets knocked out at some point. He gets injured. I think you could see a lack of production really come back to bite you there. Because guess who had 41 goals last season? Burnley had 41 goals. That's more goals. Sure, they gave up 78. But still, it doesn't take a lot to fall when you're only scoring 40. When you're scoring just barely a smidgen over 1 goal a game. Barely a smidgen over 1 goal a game. That's tough.
Yeah, when you're scoring that little of goals, it feels less in your own control of your destiny and more of just we're hoping they miss. 19th, I have Nottingham. I think Nottingham barely escaped last year. I don't think they have gotten exponentially better than they were last year. I've been besides their central defender coming in, like he's got the experience, but I don't think he is going to be the type of guy that's going to come in and get them 9, 10, 11 more points. And that's really the person they kind of need. So I think they get 19th. I think they get relegated. They've spent a ton of money, and I think it's all going to go to Vane.
Yeah, that's Elliot Anderson that you're talking about. 10 starts, 21 total appearances, no goals for Elliot Anderson. So who was there? Hold on. Let me get Nottingham Forest. Right, he was their attacking mid, right? Central mid. Anyways, yeah. And then for 20th, I have Bournemouth on 20th. I think that they will not be able to recover from the loss of Solanke, is basically what it boils down to.
Yeah, I have Southampton. I think they're too young. They feel like Burnley did. You know, Burnley was really young. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of exciting types of play. They wanted to possess a lot. They wanted to like see the ball, do what they could, but I just think they're too young. And if these players are 2 or 3 years older, potentially, but their starting lineup could be like an average of 23 years old, which I think is a little too young for a Premier League team to stay up. So I think Southampton ends up going down comfortably in 20th.
Probably not at 16 points, though, right? I don't think
no,
they'll do a little better than historically awful. All right. So let's see. Real quick rundown. I got Manchester City, then Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, Aston Villa, Manchester United, Liverpool, West Ham, Newcastle, Brighton, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Ipswich, Nottingham, Brentford, Southampton, Wolverhampton, Leicestercity, Everton, and Bournemouth. You've got Manchester City winning it all, Arsenal, Newcastle, Manchester United, Aston Villa, Tottenham, Chelsea, Liverpool, Crystal Palace, West Ham United, Ipswich, Everton, Fulham, Brighton, Wolves, Bournemouth, Leicester, Brentford, Nottingham, Southampton. Just to run it briefly. And before we go, as a cherry on top, Golden Boot, who you got?
It's going to be hard to not pick Erling Haaland. I think there's just the service in the system is there for him to... The fact that he won it last year and probably played his worst top flight season in 5 years as far as like conversion rate.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to start converting those a little bit more this season. And I think he's got a chance to get 50.
Wow.
Yeah, I really do.
So my pick is playing into my table pick, okay? I picked Cole Palmer. I'm a Cole Palmer believer. He played if he can continue on the stretch that he had at the end of last season, like I've said, and if he can be freed up a little bit by Pedro Neto coming in, which is asking a lot. For them to get second, he will have to have a season where he's in the discussion for Golden Boot, I think is what it boils down to. So if I've got them in second, then I need Cole Palmer to be playing very well. For Golden Glove, well, you mentioned him earlier, Emiliano Martinez. That's who I've got for Golden Glove. I think that... my brain's going crazy. He's Aston Villa, right?
Yeah, he's definitely going to be my pick as well.
Yeah, I think that they got better on defense, and he's already very good, you know? So that's definitely going to help. And then, what did we decide on doing best young player?
Well, if we did do one, mine would be Garnacho, kind of also playing into my my table pick. I think he's got the stuff to be able to do it. And I think that he's going to have to be the cog in the Liverpool attack to really keep them chugging along.
I've got Phil Foden because I don't have him winning best player. Because so if you looked at this year, Cole Palmer won best young player and Phil Foden won best player. I've got it flipped for this upcoming year. But I needed to give a City player some... If I have them winning the whole thing, I have to give them some sort of hardware. And if it can't be best player, then it's going to be best young player for Cole Palmer. I don't know what the qualifications are for that, but he's still young. He's still young enough, I guess. And then for best player, I did say I have Cole Palmer. If he's winning Golden Boot and he's that young, I think he's going to win the best player as well.
Yeah, I had Foden winning best player of the year. I think that he's going to do it again. And this year it's going to be more assisting more often because I think that this year feels like one of those seasons that people think it's not going to be a crazy runaway title, but it's been a minute since someone ran away with it. I think City does. Mm-hmm. And I think they break their goal scoring record. I also think De Bruyne walks away with the most assists on the season. Mm-hmm. And I think he could potentially, if he stays healthy, break 30 as his final send-off of breaking the record by a good bit.
Yeah, that'd be a lot. And then, what does it even say? Oh, best, what is it? It looks like DLA. Oh, Playmaker of the Year. That's what it says.
Yeah.
Playmaker of the Year.
Yeah, mine would be De Bruyne.
Yours would be KDB. Playing into mine. This is such a dumb pick. I've got Pablo Neto.
Pablo Neto?
Pablo Neto. Sure.
Pedro Neto?
Huh?
I said Pedro.
Pedro, yes, Pedro Neto. Who even is Pablo Neto? Pedro Neto. That's who I meant to put.
He's the guy the Wolves are going to sign next. They signed his twin brother, Pablo Neto.
Yeah, that, and then they'll also sign another João from some sort of João from Portugal again. His name's going to be João Pedro, is what his name's going to be, or João Pablo. That's it. But that'll bring us to the end of this prediction episode. It's only been 90 minutes or whatever. That seems like enough. We're doing really good here. We'll be out with a prediction for week 1 here before too long. I have so much editing to do, I just realized, in the next few days. But you know what? It's going to come out. It's going to come out, and it's going to be so great. And until it does, why don't you go ahead and grab your coffee, watch some soccer, and we'll see you on the other side.